So today I want to talk about corporations, politicians, and pride. I want to remind people that even as we see rainbow-colored objects emblazoned with the logos of big corporations, and the pride flag widely displayed in front of businesses for the month of June, that these companies, these businesses, these corporations are not friends or allies to the LGBTQ plus or queer community. Anyone who understands the ways in which capitalism works probably has realized by this point that these companies are in it for one thing and one thing only, namely profit. If they can sell you a feeling of pride back to yourself, they will. If they can create queer products and trinkets that will put more money in their pockets, they will. If they can lure you into banking with them because they have a pride flag in their window, they will. I know that many will also argue that rainbow capitalism, which most definitely prioritizes certain queer stories over others, is otherwise harmless and generally helps the broader society see certain forms of queerness as more acceptable and respectable. However, even if we accept this as true, which I personally do not, the behind-the-scenes political side shows a vile and wretched underside to the rainbow veneer that these companies use to cover themselves up. Business Insider, of all places, put out an article earlier this week that covered this extremely well. Walmart, McDonald's, and Amazon are among companies celebrating Pride after donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians who voted against the Equality Act. And if you're not familiar with the Equality Act, The Hill actually put out a decent summation of this act that I want to quote and read to you all, and then talk about very briefly. The Equality Act expressly prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in all 50 states. 21 states have now established comprehensive non-discrimination protections, but in the other 29 states, where half of all LGBTQ Americans reside, only partial and inadequate protections exist. The Equality Act would substitute a clear, comprehensive national commitment to the civil rights of LGBTQ citizens for the patchwork of protections that today leaves many vulnerable to the prejudices of others. The commitment would apply in all places where Americans go about their lives, where they work, shop, bank, seek healthcare, use transportation, and contract for legal services, to identify some aspects of daily life where gay and transgender people have faced discrimination in the past. No one should be refused housing or denied an essential service because of who they are or who they love. Now, this is important and significant because when you have this patchwork, it makes it harder for people to go about their daily lives. First and foremost, for those in the 29 states that do not have or are not seeking protections, it would create the pressure of a social change. And while we can argue that laws will not in and of themselves create the social change, the pressure of the laws will influence some people who are more centrist to start to accept people. Some people's lives will certainly improve from these laws. And while this is only the surface of protections and changes that need to happen, it certainly is nice that if people want to travel from state to state, that they know what their protections are, what is available to them, that people can eventually try to break down some of these barriers. And while there's arguments to be made that it might take a long time or may never happen, this is certainly not a bad thing to be out there and to exist. Especially when we think about how people are discriminated against daily in places like where they work, where they shop, where they bank, and if they can have any sort of legal protection or barrier between them and these forms of bigotry, then I am in all ways for it, even if that is currently not enough, nor may it be enough in the long term. So getting back to the article from Business Insider, the article goes on to say, as brands take to Twitter to celebrate Pride, many of the same companies donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians who voted against expanded LGBTQ protections. In February, the vast majority of Republicans in the House of Representatives voted against the Equality Act, which aims to expand LGBTQ protections. SEC filings show that some of the best-known companies in the U.S., including McDonald's, Walmart, and Amazon, have donated significant sums to politicians who voted against the bill. Most major companies donate to both parties via political action committees, historically giving more to Republicans. Walmart, Amazon, and McDonald's have moved towards a 50-50 split between Democrat and Republican donations. So as we go over this, I do want to point out, as an aside to the LGBTQ plus issue here, that because they are donating to Democrats and Republicans, that this means that Democrats are not your friend either. They are being backed by the exact same corporations who are fine with all of this. They are hedging their bets with both sides because they don't know where the money is going to lie at this point. And honestly, they just want people in both parties to continue to defend the practices that uphold their profit margins. That is what they are concerned with. And the majority of politicians who do take this money are, in all ways, corrupted by this financial influence. There may be some politicians out there. I certainly think that any politician who does not take corporate backing has a lot more say in my mind and is clearly a better representation of the people in their districts. But these corporations who fund money into these particular politicians are buying out their votes and are getting them to vote in ways that are favorable to their ends and means. And that includes Democrats as much as Republicans. Companies donate to politicians' campaigns, hoping to influence lawmakers on legislation that might impact business, from immigration to minimum wages. When you saw Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema go against the $15 federal minimum wage, this is why. Because companies paid them off. And so that is definitely worth talking about and keeping in mind. Now, donations were split for Walmart exactly evenly, with $596,000 going to Republicans and $596,000 going to Democrats. That means that if we remove the funding that went to Republicans who voted voted for the Equality Act, this would mean that Walmart donated over $400,000 to politicians opposing the bill who believe that the Equality Act would infringe on religious freedoms, which it does not. You have no religious protections to discriminate against people. That's not how religious protections work. Meanwhile, the company's Twitter avatar is currently rainbow hued, and the retailer is selling a collection of Pride merchandise. Remember what I said. They'll take your money, they'll make trinkets, and they will spout it all on Twitter to put out a great rainbow veneer. But they do not care at the end of the day whether or not the Equality Act is in any way pushed out. They do not care about workers who are, some of whom are very much queer, getting the ability to be paid a $15 minimum wage. They do not care about you being in any way, shape, or form protected by the law or protected by any sort of institution if you are queer. They want your money. They want you to think of them as their queer, as basically a friend to the queers. And they do not care if you are in fact protected or in any way safe. As long as they have your money, who cares? Now, Amazon has supported the Equality Act since 2015, but more than 460,000 of their donations also went to politicians who voted against the Equality Act. Now I need to point it out that Amazon probably has a lot of LGBTQ plus people working within their company. They're the same people who are peeing in bottles, who are not able to secure a decent wage, who could not unionize because of pressure from Amazon constantly fighting against them. And if LGBTQ people are in some way, shape, or form, a good number of them are in the working class, then they are not being represented by these companies and corporations, not just via the Equality Act, but in their own actions and their own business practices. As Amazon spokesperson told Insider that the company, quote, engages with policymakers and regulators on a wide range of issues that affect our business, customers, and employees, namely making money. That's what they're vested in. That's the translation there. They are vested in ways to make themselves more money and the ways they can maneuver the political arena to make themselves both look good and manage to make more profit. That does not mean that we agree with any individual or political organization 100% of the time on every issue. And this includes legislation that discriminates or encourages discrimination against LGBTQ plus community. But they're willing to put all of that aside for the politicians who are willing to vote in these ways if it means that that same politician will vote in favor of their business not getting taxed as much and, otherwise being treated favorably by the government itself. LGBTQ people matter, but not really. Not when profit matters. Not when our workers are forced to pee in bottles. Not when our workers can't get a union. That's when queer people get pushed to the side. But we'll throw something up on Twitter. We'll defend you in that way. We'll sell you Amazon products that are, based with, rainbow flags. That's fine. Just give us your money. And then otherwise, shut up and move to the side. From 2019 to 2020, McDonald's PAC, which includes other fast food companies, donated a total of $213,000 to lawmakers who voted against the bill, while simultaneously tweeting out how they're proud of you and you should be proud too. If they can sell you your pride, they will. Now, companies are quote-unquote changing how they approach political donations. In 2021, more brands are openly supporting LGBTQ people and celebrating pride on social media than ever before. Meanwhile, in the US, we're seeing an explosion of anti-trans bills that are being put out there, mostly by Republican politicians, and I wonder where they're getting their funding from. I wonder who's funding these Republican politicians, even while some of these corporations are coming out and explicitly denouncing the positions of these anti-trans bills. They are playing both sides here. And employees and customers are increasingly expecting companies to uphold progressive social values, including vocal support of LGBTQ people. But companies typically don't want to surrender the chance to engage with politicians on both sides of the aisle. They want to have everything. They want your money, they want your support, and the reason they're even supporting you at this point, or is supporting our queer communities, is because they think that the popular social narrative has moved in such a way as their discrimination against LGBTQ people and queer people would reduce their profits, because they can also sell products that are queer coded. They can sell rainbow objects. They can make money off of this. And if they can still fund the politicians behind the scenes because it's covered up in this rainbow veneer, then yay, they get to have everything. They get to have both sides. And so when we have McDonald's, Walmart, and Amazon and all these companies involved with this duplicitous practice of pledging their bets on all sides in order to secure profits, these companies deserve neither praise nor recognition. Further, we really do need to acknowledge that these companies who mistreat their workers, especially their queer ones, and continue to support politicians who seek to make the lives of queer people a living hell, and much, much harder, who are in no ways helping the queer community outside of wanting to take money off of products that they make and sell, and the image that they can put out there. These companies are not our friends. They are not our allies in any regard. They may be politically useful in certain ways. There may be ways we can use them to pressure certain institutions, and we may be able to change certain paradigms and help socially because of them. But that does not mean that they are on our side. Quite to the contrary, they are going to put out versions of queerness that benefit them, and they are going to appeal to that side of the LGBTQ plus community. They may be, again, politically useful in certain ways, but only in certain ways. That does not make them allies or put them on our side. If they can extract wealth from people by funding anti-gay politicians, they will do that. Major corporations funding politicians should not even be a part of politics, to be honest. This is something that we should be advocating to push against. But given our current system, let's not pretend that these corporations selling pride back to us is in any way supportive of our positions. They are, in all ways, and will always be, an enemy and antithetical to any practice of life that is outside of the capitalist paradigm and norm. And for years, they were consistently our enemies. So with that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and bell for notifications. You can follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. My name is Anarchist Tara, and I thank you for watching.